The forest was dark even in the middle of the day. Tall trees blocked the light and the air was heavy with strange smells. A young human boy named Aaron walked slowly, his heart beating fast. He was far from home, too far, but something had pushed him to keep walking deeper. He had heard a cry, not a human cry, but sharp, broken, and filled with fear. He followed it without thinking, his feet crunching leaves, his hands trembling. When he stepped through a wall of bushes, his eyes widened in shock. There, in the middle of a clearing, a small alien girl was trapped. The girl was cornered against a rock, her silver skin glowing faintly in the dim light. Her large eyes shimmered with terror as a beast crouched low in front of her. The creature was massive, with dark fur, sharp claws, and fangs that dripped with saliva. Its growl shook the ground, and the girl whimpered, frozen in fear. Aaron's chest tightened. He knew he should run. He was just a boy, and the monster was death itself. But something inside him would not let him move away. His mother's words echoed in his mind, that a human heart was strongest when it chose to protect. And so, he stepped forward, his small body standing between the beast and the alien girl. The beast snarled, confused by the sudden challenge. The girl gasped, her voice barely a whisper. "Why, human? Why would you stand there?" Aaron did not answer. His hands curled into fists, his legs shaking but planted firm. The beast lunged forward with a roar that split the forest. Claws slashed through the air. One caught Aaron across the arm, tearing flesh. Blood spilled fast, staining the ground. The pain was fire. In his body, he cried out but did not move aside. He stood tall, though his knees trembled. The girl covered her mouth, tears filling her wide eyes. The beast struck again, claws raking across Aaron's chest. His shirt tore, his skin burned, and more blood flowed. But still, he refused to fall. With shaking breath, he shouted at the beast. His voice cracked but fierce. You will not touch her." The alien girl had never seen such madness, never seen such courage. In her world, no one risked their life for another unless bound by family or oath. Yet here was a human boy, weak, small, already bleeding, and he still stood before her like a wall. She reached out, her fingers trembling, but she dared not pull him back. The beast circled, growling louder, its yellow eyes full of hunger and hate. Aaron's vision blurred from the loss of blood, but he forced himself to move with it. He spread his arms, blocking the girl completely, his body a shield of flesh. Each breath hurt. Each step shook his frame, but his spirit burned brighter than ever. The alien girl whispered, "Please, you will die." But Aaron smiled faintly, though his lips were pale. He said nothing, only set his feet into the dirt. The beast roared again, and charged, its claws flashing like lightning. In that final moment, time slowed. Aaron felt no fear, only the warmth of knowing he was not running away. The beast's claws dug deep into his side, blood spraying across the stones. The girl screamed, but Aaron still did not fall. His body swayed yet refused to break. At the edge of the clearing, shadows moved. Alien hunters rushed forward, their weapons drawn, their eyes widening at the scene. They saw a human child standing against a monster, blood pouring from his wounds, and behind him a young girl of their people, alive because of him. The hunters leapt into battle, their spears striking the beast. The monster howled in rage and pain, thrashing against the sudden attack. Aaron's knees finally gave way, and he fell to the ground, his chest heaving. The girl rushed forward, cradling his head, her tears falling fast onto his bloodied face. "Stay with me, human, please stay," she begged, her voice shaking. Aaron's eyes half closed, his lips whispering, "You are safe now." The beast collapsed under the hunter's blades. Its roar silenced at last. But in that moment, none looked at the dead monster. All eyes were on the boy who bled for one of their own. The hunters carried him back to the village, their faces torn between anger and awe. The girl refused to let go of his hand, her voice soft but fierce. She knew that this human had done something no alien ever would, and she feared the chief's judgment would decide whether his blood was wasted or honored. The alien hunters carried Aaron through the forest, his body limp in their arms. Blood trailed behind them, staining the leaves, every step making the smell stronger. The alien girl walked close, her hand clutching his, refusing to let go even as her people whispered. Her eyes were full of tears, yet her face was fierce, as if daring anyone to take him away. The hunters were unsettled. They had never seen anything like this. A human child who fought a beast alone, who bled to protect one of their young. It was madness to them. Humans were supposed to be weak, selfish outsiders. But now this boy had broken every belief they carried, and none knew how to speak of it. When they reached the village gates, the crowd gathered quickly. Alien voices rose in confusion. Some shouted in anger, others in awe. They saw the human boy bleeding, half-conscious, carried by their strongest warriors. And beside him the girl, who clung to him as if her life depended on his. Why is he here? An elder shouted, his eyes cold. He is human, he is enemy. Why risk our lives for him? Others agreed, their voices sharp and cruel. But the girl raised her voice, trembling, but loud. He saved me. He bled for me. Her words cut through the noise, and for a moment the village fell silent. All eyes turned to her, the daughter of the tribe's healer, young but not weak. She stood tall, though her small body shook, pointing to the boy in the hunter's arms. If not for him, the beast would have killed me. He chose pain over running away. The hunters looked at each other, some nodding slowly. They had seen it with their own eyes, the boy's stand, his wounds, his refusal to fall, but still the law was clear. Humans were not welcome in the village. To shelter him would break tradition. To let him die would break honor. The chief appeared at last, tall and silent, his eyes like stone. He stepped into the crowd, his presence enough to silence every voice. He looked at the boy, pale and bleeding, his chest rising and falling with weak breaths. Then he looked at the girl, who stood firm even as tears ran down her cheeks. You say he saved you? The chief's deep voice rumbled. The girl nodded, her voice cracking. Yes, he saved me. He gave his blood for me. The chief turned to the hunters. And you saw this? One of them bowed his head. Yes, chief, he fought until we arrived. Without him, she would be dead. The chief's gaze lingered on the human boy for a long moment. His silence was heavy, the crowd restless, whispers filling the air like wind in dry grass. Finally he spoke. He will not die in the dirt, bring him to the healer's tent. Gasps spread through the crowd, half in anger, half in disbelief. The boy was laid on a soft mat, the healer rushing to stop the bleeding. Strange herbs were pressed into his wounds, bandages wrapped tight around his chest. He stirred weakly, his eyes opening for a brief moment. The girl leaned close, whispering, You are safe now, human. Do not give up. He blinked at her, his lips barely moving. I kept my promise. Her tears fell on his cheek, and she held his hand tighter. Around them, the villagers watched with suspicion, their stares sharp as blades. Some muttered that the chief's mercy was a mistake, that the boy would bring ruin, the eye. Night grew heavy with tension. Torches burned bright. The boy's shallow breathing echoed inside the healer's tent, each breath a battle. The girl never left his side, even when ordered to rest. She refused. Her small figure sat beside him, her hand never letting go of his. Outside, voices rose again, louder this time. Many demanded the boy be cast out, his blood left to feed the earth. He is not one of us, they shouted. He is danger, he is curse. But others whispered of his courage, his stand, his defiance of death for the sake of their child. When the chief returned, the firelight carved deep shadows on his face. He raised his hand, and silence fell over the angry crowd. Tomorrow at dawn I will give judgment, he declared. The words carried power, the final choice left only to him. The villagers bowed their heads, some pleased, some worried. The girl's heart thudded in her chest, fear and hope twisting inside her. She looked at the boy lying weak but alive, his skin pale yet his spirit unbroken. She whispered to herself, I will fight for you, even if no one else does. The night stretched long, full of whispers and restless hearts. The boy's blood had bought him a place in the center of their world, but whether that place would be his grave or his honor, only the chief's decision at dawn would decide. The night was long and heavy. The village did not sleep. Fires burned at every corner and voices whispered like restless spirits. The human boy lay weak inside the healer's tent, his chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. Beside him, the alien girl sat awake, her eyes red but her hand still wrapped around his. She did not move, not even when her mother, the healer, told her to rest. Her answer was always the same: "He bled for me, so I will not leave him." The healer sighed, knowing her daughter's spirit was strong, stronger than most believed, but even her strength could not fight the law of the tribe. At dawn, the sound of drums rolled across the village. Every family left their homes, gathering near the great fire at the center. The chief stood tall, his dark cloak brushing the dirt, his staff glowing faintly in the morning light. His face was hard, his silence sharper than any blade. The human boy was carried out, still weak, his wounds bandaged tight. He blinked against the bright sun, confusion flickering in his tired eyes. The alien girl walked beside him, never letting go of his hand. Her small body stood between him and the crowd, daring anyone to strike. The villagers roared with anger when they saw the boy. "He is not one of us," they shouted. "He is danger, curse outsider." Some spat on the ground, their eyes burning with hatred. Others stayed silent, remembering the story told by the hunters. The chief raised his hand and the voices fell quiet. His deep voice carried across the circle. "A human stands before us, his blood spilled on our ground." He paused, his eyes sweeping across the crowd, cold and unreadable. Some call for his death, others for his exile, but one voice claims he gave his blood to save her life. The alien girl stepped forward, her knees trembling but her voice steady. She pointed at the boy beside her. "Without him I would be dead." Her voice cracked with emotion. "He fought the beast. He stood when he should have run. He bled. For me." Gasps rippled through the crowd, for never had one so young spoken so boldly. The chief's gaze turned to her, his voice low. "Why would a human do such a thing?" The girl shook her head, her eyes wet with tears. "I do not know, Chief, but he did it and I am alive." The boy stirred, his voice weak but clear. "Because no one deserves to die alone." The words fell into the silence like stones, into water. The villagers shifted uncomfortably, their whispers rising again. Some muttered that his words were lies, tricks to earn pity, but others felt something stir in their hearts, a question they could not answer. Why would a human child, an outsider, choose pain over safety? The chief struck his staff on the ground and the whispers died, his eyes fixed on the boy, sharp and unblinking. "You spilled blood for one of ours, yet you are not one of us." His voice grew heavy. "By our law, you have no place here, but by our honor we cannot ignore courage." The words hung in the air, pulling the crowd into deeper silence. One elder stepped forward, his face full of anger. "Chief, tradition is clear. He must die, or our ways are broken." Another elder shook her head, her voice strong. "And if we kill him, what message do we give our young? That courage means nothing." The crowd split, voices rising on both sides, anger, fear, awe, and doubt. The chief lifted his hand, again, and the noise slowly died away. The human boy's vision blurred, his body weak, but he could hear every word. He felt the weight of hundreds of eyes, felt the fear in the air, but he did not lower his head. He sat tall, though his chest burned with pain. The girl clung to his arm, her voice breaking. "Please, Chief, do not let him die." The chief's gaze flicked between the boy and the girl, between blood spilled and tears shed, between law and honor. Finally he spoke, his words slow and sharp. "At dawn tomorrow, he will face the trial." The crowd gasped, some in excitement, others in fear. The girl's eyes widened. "The trial, but he is weak. He is bleeding." The chief turned away, his cloak sweeping the dust. "If he has courage, let him prove it to all." With that, he walked into the shadows of his hall, leaving the village buzzing with tension. The boy leaned against the girl, whispering, "What is the trial?" Her lips trembled, her heart pounding. She whispered back, "The trial of blood. Only warriors survive it." Aaron closed his eyes. his breathing shallow but steady, and in that moment he knew his battle was only beginning. The night before the trial was heavy with silence. The village fires burned low, shadows stretched across the dirt paths, and fear lingered in the air. Inside the healer's tent, Aaron lay weak, his body wrapped in fresh bandages, his breaths shallow. Beside him, the alien girl sat with her knees pulled to her chest, refusing to move. Her eyes stayed on his pale face, every rise and fall of his chest making her heart ache. She thought of the beast's claws, the way his blood spilled across the stones. She thought of how he stood like a wall between her and death, though he was just a boy. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but her fists clenched tight. She whispered softly, afraid to wake him. "Why did you do it, human? Why risk everything for me?" Aaron stirred, his eyes half opening, his voice faint but steady. "Because you were afraid and I could not walk away." The words struck her like lightning, simple yet sharp. Her throat tightened, her heart swelling with something she could not name. Her mother, the healer, entered the tent carrying a bowl of steaming herbs. She knelt beside Aaron, placing the mixture against his wounds. The smell was strong, burning his nose, but he did not complain. The girl reached out, brushing sweat from his forehead, her touch gentle and trembling. The healer looked at her daughter, worry in her eyes. "You must rest, the trial comes at dawn." The girl shook her head fiercely. "I will not leave him, not now, not ever." The healer sighed, whispering, "You are young, but your spirit is strong. Still, you cannot change the chief's will." The girl turned away, her eyes blazing. "If the chief chooses death, then I will not forgive him." Her mother froze at the words, knowing such defiance was dangerous. But she also knew her daughter's heart was unshakable. She left the tent in silence, leaving the two children alone. The night outside was cold, the stars sharp and distant. The girl leaned close to Aaron, whispering again, "You must live, you must survive." Her hands clutched his tightly, her tears falling onto his skin. "I will speak for you. I will beg if I must. They will hear me," she promised. Aaron gave a weak smile, his lips pale. "Then I will try, for you." She pressed her forehead against his hand, her voice breaking. "I will not let them take you, not after what you did." The boy's breathing slowed, his eyes drifting closed. The girl stayed awake, watching him, every sound from outside making her tense. She imagined the trial, imagined his fragile body standing against pain again. When the first light of dawn touched the sky, the drums began. The village stirred, voices rising as the people gathered near the great fire. Inside the tent, the girl shook Aaron gently, whispering, "It is time." His eyes opened slowly, tired but determined. She helped him to his feet, her small hands gripping his arm tightly. He stumbled, his legs weak, but he refused to fall. Step by step, they walked toward the center of the village. Every villager turned to look, their eyes filled with suspicion, fear, and hunger for judgment. At the fire, the chief stood tall, his cloak heavy with authority. He raised his staff, and silence swept across the crowd. "The trial begins," he declared, his voice booming. The villagers leaned closer, eager to see what would happen. Before the trial could start, the girl ran forward, her heart pounding. She stood before the chief, her small figure shaking but her voice strong. "I beg you, chief, do not make him face this. He is wounded. He is weak." The crowd gasped at her boldness. No child had ever spoken so directly to the chief. The chief's eyes narrowed, his voice low. "You beg for him, why?" The girl's eyes shone with tears, but her voice did not break. "Because he gave his blood for me. He chose pain over life. He saved me when no one else did," she said. "If he dies now, then his courage means nothing, and our honor means nothing." The crowd stirred, some whispering agreement, others shaking their heads. The chief's gaze was sharp as fire. But he did not interrupt her. Her voice rose higher. "I will not let him be thrown away like dirt. If he dies, then I will carry shame forever." She dropped to her knees before the fire, her hands pressed together. "Please let him live." The silence that followed was thick as stone. The villagers stared, Caught between tradition and the raw plea of a child, the chief's face remained unreadable, but his eyes lingered on her, then on the boy. Finally, he struck his staff on the ground, ending the moment. "The trial will decide," he said coldly. "Not you, not me, but the trial." The girl's heart broke, her body shaking, but she did not move from her knees. Her plea had been made, her courage laid bare. Now all that remained was whether the boy's strength could match his spirit. The circle of fire burned brighter as the sun rose over the village. Every villager stood gathered, their eyes fixed on the human boy. The chief's staff struck the ground once, its echo rolling like thunder. "The trial begins," he declared. His voice shaking the silence, Aaron stood in the center, his body weak, his bandages stained with fresh blood. Each breath burned his chest, each step made his knees tremble, yet he did not fall, his eyes steady as he looked at the chief. The alien girl stood at the edge of the circle, her hands clenched, her heart racing. The trial of blood was known to all, a test of spirit and survival. It was not about strength alone, but the will to face death without turning away. A shallow pit was dug in the earth, lined with burning stones. At its center lay sharp bones, broken wood, and jagged rock. The chief raised his staff. "If he walks through the fire pit, if he reaches the other side without falling, then he has proven his spirit." Gasps filled the air, for no child had ever been asked to face such a trial. Even warriors bore scars from it. Some never walked again. And now a human boy, bleeding and weak, was asked to survive it. The alien girl cried out, "He is wounded. This is not fair." But the chief silenced her with a glance, his voice heavy. "Life is never fair, child. Only truth reveals itself in fire." The crowd cheered for tradition, their voices hungry for blood. Some shouted that the boy would fail. Others whispered he might endure. Aaron looked at the pit, the heat rising, smoke curling in the air. He swallowed hard, his throat dry. But his steps moved forward. The girl's voice carried through the crowd, trembling but clear. "Do not give up, Aaron, I believe in you." Her words struck him like a spark, and his heart steadied. He stepped into the pit, the stones searing his bare feet. Pain exploded up his legs, his body shaking violently. The crowd roared, some in awe, some in laughter. But Aaron kept moving, one step at a time, each breath like fire in his chest. The jagged bones cut his skin, his blood dripping onto the burning stones. His vision blurred, sweat poured down his face, but he did not stop. Every time his knees buckled, he forced himself upright. Every time the pain screamed, he remembered the girl's tears at the edge. Some villagers began to murmur, "He is only human, yet he does not fall." Others shook their heads. "He will collapse before the end. No one can endure this." But the girl's voice rose again, strong as thunder. "Aaron, do not stop. You are almost there." The chief's eyes narrowed as he watched the boy stumble. He expected weakness, yet what he saw was defiance. This child carried no weapon, no armor, only will. And still he moved, step after step, across fire and blood. Aaron's legs gave way once, his body crashing against the stones. The heat burned his skin. His body screamed to quit. The crowd gasped, some cheering his failure, others silent in shock. But then, with a groan, Aaron pushed himself back up. His arms shook, his chest heaved. But he stood again. The girl fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face, whispering, "Please, please, keep going." Her voice reached him, stronger than the roar of the crowd, and with a final push, he stumbled toward the far edge. When his feet left the pit, silence fell. The boy collapsed into the dirt, blood dripping from his wounds, his body trembling like a broken bowstring. But his head turned, his eyes searching. And when they found the girl, his lips curved into the faintest smile. The chief struck his staff, the sound sharp. "He has crossed," the chief declared. "He has proven his spirit." The crowd erupted, half in cheers, half in outrage. Some called it a miracle. Others cursed it as weakness in the law. The girl rushed forward, throwing herself beside him. She lifted his head into her lap, tears falling onto his face. "You did it, Aaron, you did not fall," she whispered. His eyes fluttered open, his voice faint. I told you I would not. The chief stepped closer, his face unreadable. He looked at the boy, then at the girl. In his silence, the tribe felt the weight of something new. The trial had ended, but the judgment still hung heavy in the air. The villagers waited, their breath caught, their hearts tense. The chief would soon speak, and his words would shape the fate of the boy. But for now, one truth was clear. The human had bled, had walked through fire, and had not broken. The fire pit still smoked, the smell of burned flesh and blood hanging in the air. The human boy lay in the dirt, his body trembling, his bandages soaked through. The alien girl knelt beside him, cradling his head in her lap, her tears falling like rain. The crowd around them buzzed with restless voices, anger, awe, fear, and confusion mixing together. The chief stood silent, his cloak heavy, his staff pressed into the ground. He looked at the boy who had crossed the pit of fire. A trial even. Warriors feared, the villagers waited, holding their breath, their eyes burning with questions. Would the chief honor the boy's courage, or would he order his death? One elder stepped forward, his voice sharp as a blade. Chief, tradition is clear. Humans are not of us. No trial can change that. Another elder raised her hand, her voice calm but fierce. But can we spit on courage? Can we kill one who bled for our child? The voices rose again, louder, harsher. The circle shook with the weight of a decision that could not please all. The girl's voice broke through the noise, her small figure standing tall now. She faced the chief directly, her eyes red but blazing with fire. You asked for courage, and he showed it. You asked for strength, and he gave it. What more must he give? Her voice trembled but did not break. If you kill him now, you kill honor itself. Gasps spread through the crowd, for no one had ever spoken to the chief like that. But the chief did not silence her. His eyes lingered on her, then returned to the boy. Aaron's lips parted weakly, his voice like a whisper of wind. I did not bleed to be your enemy. I only wanted her safe. The girl pressed her hand against his, her tears spilling faster. Do not speak, save your strength. The chief finally raised his staff, and silence fell heavy as stone. By law, humans have no place here, he said slowly, his voice deep as thunder. By honor, this child has shown a spirit stronger than many of ours. His words pulled the village into deeper silence. Torn between fear and pride, one warrior shouted, If we accept him, we break the chain of our fathers. Another answered, If we kill him, we spit on the blood that saved our own. The voices clashed like storm winds, tearing the crowd. In two, the chief's face was unreadable, but his eyes burned with the weight of choice. The girl dropped to her knees again, her voice breaking. Then I choose for you, chief. The villagers gasped, their voices rising in shock. She pressed her forehead to the dirt, her hands tight against the ground. If he dies, then I carry shame, and I will never forgive this tribe. Her words cut deeper than any blade. She was young, but she was the healer's daughter. Her voice carried weight. The chief's jaw tightened, his staff trembling slightly in his grip. He knew the trial had ended, but the true judgment had only begun. The human boy tried to lift his head, his breath ragged. Do not fight for me, he whispered. I made my choice when I stood for you. The girl shook her head fiercely, her tears falling. And I make mine now. I will not let them take you. Her words wrapped around him like armor, stronger than any shield. The crowd grew louder, some shouting for his life, others demanding his death. The village had never been so divided, never so shaken. The chief raised his staff high, his voice rising above the storm. The law demands death, the honor demands life, and I must choose between them. Every villager leaned forward, hearts pounding. The girl clutched Aaron tighter, whispering, Please, please let him live. The chief's eyes closed, his chest heavy with the weight of generations. When they opened, fire burned within them. He stepped closer to the boy, his shadow falling over him. The staff lowered, until it touched Aaron's chest, right over his heart. Gasps spread, for this was the sign of final judgment. The village froze, waiting, every breath held still. But the chief did not speak yet, his voice caught in the storm of law and honor. The boy's eyes fluttered closed, his strength nearly gone. The girl bent over him, her voice shaking. "No matter what he chooses, I will never leave you." The chief's silence stretched long, heavier than death itself. The impossible choice hung over them all. Would the chief uphold the law and order the boy's death? Or would he break tradition and honor courage? The answer would come with his next breath, and it would change the tribe forever. The village waited, every eye fixed on the chief. His staff rested against the boy's chest, the symbol of judgment. The fire cracked beside them, its glow painting long shadows across the crowd. Not a single voice rose now. Silence pressed down like a mountain. The girl held Iran tighter, her small hands trembling. Her voice broke the silence, soft but sharp. "If he dies, then I will never forgive you." Her words hung in the air, bold enough to make warriors flinch, but her eyes did not waver, her tears shining in the firelight. The chief's gaze lingered on her, then on the boy's pale face. Aaron's breaths were weak, each one a struggle, yet his eyes still flickered open. He whispered faintly, "Do not cry. You are safe now." The girl shook her head fiercely. "Not without you." The chief closed his eyes, his face carved with stone-like lines. He lifted his staff high, the crowd leaning forward, their hearts thudding like drums. Everyone expected the strike of death, the final judgment of law. But the staff came down gently, resting over Aaron's heart once more. The chief's voice rose deep as thunder. "Any who spill blood to protect one of ours is no longer outsider." Gasps erupted across the circle. Some cried out in anger, others in awe. The chief's eyes burned as he spoke again. "This human is no longer enemy, he is one of us." The silence shattered into chaos, voices clashing like storm winds. One elder shouted, "You break the chain of our fathers, you spit on tradition." But another cried back, "You spit on honor if you kill him. The chief has chosen, and his word is law." The crowd split, anger and wonder colliding. The chief struck his staff. Again the sound cutting through the storm. "My word is final," he declared, his voice fierce. "If any challenge this, then challenge me." No warrior moved, no elder spoke. They bowed their heads, some in respect, some in silent rage. The decision was made, and the village would live with it. The girl's tears flowed freely, but now they were tears of relief. She pressed her forehead to Aaron's, whispering, "You are one of us now, do you hear?" The boy gave the faintest smile, his lips pale. "I only wanted you safe. Nothing more." Her hands tightened around his, her heart soaring and breaking at once. The healer rushed forward, pushing through the stunned crowd. "Bring him to the tent, quickly. His life still hangs by a thread." The villagers cleared the way, some muttering curses, others bowing their heads as the boy passed. The girl walked beside him, never letting go of his hand. As they entered the healer's tent, the chief's voice carried behind them. "Remember this day. Remember his blood. Remember that courage is not bound by race or law." The villagers fell into silence again, each word sinking deep into their hearts. Some accepted it, some rejected it, but none could forget it. Inside, the healer worked quickly, her hands steady. The girl held a bowl of water, wiping blood and sweat from Aaron's face. Her voice whispered softly, "Stay, please stay. You belong here now." The boy's eyelids fluttered, his voice no more than breath. "I will try." That night, the village remained unsettled. Some saw the boy as hope, others as a threat. But the chief's word was law, and no one dared break it. The human who bled for one of theirs was now tied to their future. The girl refused to leave his side. Her body curled beside his mat. Her eyes stayed on his face, her heart whispering promises she could not speak aloud. She remembered the beast, his stand, his blood spilling on the stones. And now she knew one truth. He was not just a boy. He was a shield, a brother, maybe something more. When the dawn came, Aaron opened his eyes once more. The girl was already awake, her hand still holding his. Her smile was small but fierce. "You live, Aaron. You live, and now you are ours." For the first time, the boy felt warmth around him, not as a stranger but as one of the tribe. The chief stood outside the tent, his eyes on the rising sun. He knew his choice had broken tradition, but it had also given birth to something greater. The boy's blood had changed the tribe and perhaps their future, and the chief whispered to himself, this was the only choice.